Hey everyone, it's Mary Brownlee, licensed professional counselor. Today we're going to talk about betrayal trauma. This specific type of trauma is pretty destructive, it's pretty painful. If any of you have experienced this type of trauma, this video will be especially helpful for you. We're going to be talking about what betrayal trauma is, the different types, and also the symptoms that it can cause in survivors of this type of trauma. And then we'll also cover multiple ways of healing and recovering from this type of trauma. So I hope you find this video helpful. Feel free to drop a comment below. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. I'm loving the comments and suggestions so far. And as always, please like and subscribe. Your support means so much to me. Let's go ahead and get started. Betrayal trauma refers to the experience of being significantly hurt and let down by somebody that we loved and that we relied on in a way that really breaches our emotional connection and attachment to this person. So it's really caused by us trusting and loving somebody and feeling safe with them, and then they violate this in some significant way. There are different types of betrayal trauma. The most significant, of course, is parental abuse and neglect. Children are reliant on their caregivers for safety and having their emotional and physical and social needs met. And when parents abuse and neglect them, that is the most significant betrayal of this primary attachment bond between caregiver and child. Other types of betrayal trauma include infidelity, cheating on your spouse or your partner, lying and secretive behaviors. For example, perhaps there is a relationship where a partner is a significant alcoholic or substance abuser and hides this type of behavior from the spouse, who finds out later through this trail of destructive lies coming out. Maybe it's receipts that they found, missing money, secretive trips, etc. So stuff like that also can cause betrayal trauma. And then there's ones, from trusted friends or other significant social relationships or family relationships where the bond is broken after some significant betrayal and breach of trust. So betrayal blindness is similar to Stockholm syndrome. For example, when an abuse victim begins to feel friendship or even liking for the perpetrator or the abuser who's harmed them significantly. So this occurs when an individual who is very heavily reliant on someone else to take care of their basic needs or for their protection, for example. Kids are a big example here. They are reliant on their mother and father to get their emotional needs met and their social needs met. And oftentimes what you see is that children will grow up to be adults and really protect their parents' image and their parents' emotional well-being and defend their parents, even despite their parents being significantly abusive and harmful to them. And so this is really caused by a child's innate need to protect themselves emotionally and psychologically, because it is so threatening to recognize that their parents are abusive, that it is much easier for the child to blame themselves as somehow being unworthy or deserving of the abuse. And they're very much in denial, for example. And they're identifying with the abuser to stay safe oftentimes as well. So other examples of betrayal blindness, for example, the victim will change their behavior to keep the abuser happy. The victim might fail to see the extent of the trauma. Even with great evidence, they might still defend the abuser. And that the denial serves to protect the victim from reality, and thus also protects them from significant emotional distress too. So this denial and avoidance of reality is really key here with betrayal blindness. Symptoms of betrayal trauma can be quite numerous. It's very common to see symptoms of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or CPTSD. I have other videos that I'll link below in the description for further detailed information on CPTSD if you're interested. It's very common for victims to have a sense of hypervigilance, a strong startle reflex, to have intrusive thoughts related to the trauma and the person who's harmed them, to experience grief and loss and sadness and depression related to the trauma, to have altered beliefs about other people. Are other people even trustworthy? They're going to have difficulty with trust. Shame and low self worth is common. Believing that it was somehow the victim's fault, very commonly seen. Constantly thinking about what the victim could have done differently. Feeling alone in the world. Anger, feelings of being violated. Revenge fantasies, for example. Depression and anxiety symptoms. Re-examining all of your memories to examine what was real and what was fake. Very much these come in the form of like intrusive thoughts of like, ooh, am I imagining things, or am I too sensitive, or what if I had done this, or could I have changed things by doing this instead, or was that real, or is my mind making it up? So yeah, that can definitely happen with betrayal trauma. Trouble concentrating, disassociation and numbness, not really feeling anything. And also a very strong desire to have your reality validated by other people. Betrayal trauma is crazy making. There's a lot of gaslighting of the victim's reality by the perpetrator. And so victims oftentimes, when they finally do see a therapist, are just so starved for some type of validation. Like, am I crazy? Is this really abusive? Was this wrong? What happened to me? Am I overreacting? And so they'll really need a lot of validation from a neutral third party. All right, let's switch gears and talk about how we can heal from betrayal trauma. The first and most important is grief work. So this really comes in the form of recognizing all the different layers of us that we've lost along the way. A loss of our identity, our self-worth, our pride in ourselves, our trust in ourselves, our loss of our ability to trust others, our loss of any hopes and dreams that things could have been any different, loss of hopes and dreams of a shared future with the perpetrator. So grief really involves losses of all different types. And it's quite common for grief to last a significant period of time. And the important thing is to remember that grief is normal after we've experienced loss, and not to avoid the grief work. If we avoid the grief work, we stop ourselves from healing. And that is not something we want to do when we have this type of trauma. So grief work involves accepting our emotions as they come up. Yes, they're painful, but that's normal. We've gone through something painful. It's letting ourselves feel the feelings, giving the feelings words, labeling them. And finally, acceptance is the final stage. And so I've listed right here at the bottom of this slide the different stages of grief. Very common in the beginning after betrayal trauma for us to be in a period of denial and numbing. And then we might go through a stage of very, very high degree of anger and rage even, as we recognize what has been done to us and how wrong it was. And then we might go back to like a bargaining stage where we go kind of back in the fog and we begin to question our reality and doing those types of questions of like, am I overreacting? Am I too sensitive? Maybe I'm making too much out of this. Or what if I could have done this differently? Or maybe I could have done that differently. Depression really hits when we finally recognize, ooh, this really happened and it was wrong and there's nothing I could have done to change the outcome. And boom, oh, does the sadness hit us then. And then finally, at the end of all of these messy grief stages, which by the way are not linear, they don't go in a straight line, they're messy, they're all over the place, up, down, 2 steps forward, 3 steps backwards, totally normal. But when you reach the end of grief, you will know, because you will feel a deep sense of acceptance over what has happened. And you will be able to let go of this chapter of your life like you have finished a chapter and the book is closed. And it just no longer is ever present every single waking moment and destroying your lives and your emotional well-being. It literally, it's like laying it to rest finally. And you will know when you're in the stage of acceptance. It is really a stage where you feel peaceful and you're ready to move on, and the memories and the experience is no longer haunting you day to day. The second is self-compassion. It's so important for us when we've been betrayed by those we loved to be kind to ourselves. This was not our fault. We didn't deserve to be betrayed in the way that we were. And most importantly, that other people's negative behavior has nothing to do with us. It's not a reflection of us. It's not a reflection of our worth. It's a reflection of who they are. They are the ones that are capable of abusing and betraying other people. If you are the victim of this type of abuse, you did not deserve this. And so important for you to give yourself the same sort of self-compassion and kindness and gentleness that you would give anyone else who is struggling with the same type of trauma. The third way is by telling our story. This is where a therapist or a trusted friend or confidant can come in handy. It's so important for us to take our voice back. So betrayal trauma really strips us of our power, of our voice. It very much damages our identity and self-worth. And so by telling our story to somebody who is a compassionate, kind, empathetic person, it allows us to get that validation we so desperately need and allows us to be cared about and starts the process of healing, that our story matters. It matters, and it's important and worth being told. So it's also a great way to process any emotions that are coming up from the trauma. And it's really about changing the narrative. So there's this type of therapy called narrative therapy, and it's all about writing the story of you, like what happened to you. And then as you write your story, what you find is that the story begins to change over time. And it may have started out very painful and feeling very much powerless and voiceless and out of control. But then by the time you get finished writing your narrative, it changes into one of overcoming and one of resilience and one of being empowered to heal and to change others around you for better. And so this is where we can begin to be the author of our own lives, and no one can take that power away from us, and no one can take our voice away from us. So this is a really crucial step for us to be empowered and to feel like our voice matters and that people care about us and what has happened to us. So the fourth step is about finding a healthy social support system. This is so crucial for many people who have suffered from complex trauma, which really is that relationship trauma that's repeated relationship violations from those who are closest to them. So if you don't have a healthy social support system in your family, for example, it's about finding a family of choice. So these are people you choose to be in your life, not just those who you automatically grew up with and didn't really have a choice to be around. So when we're adults, we now can choose who we want to be in our lives, and we can choose who we don't want to be in our lives. And that's where our power lies, is in the choice. And so some of the ways that you can begin to build this beautiful new family of choice, or this strong social support network, which we know is so crucial for our mental health and healing from trauma, is people like your colleagues or your coworkers, friends, for example. Support groups are a great way to meet new people. Any types of group that have a shared interest or hobby that you might enjoy. There might be groups out there, for example, people who like to play Pokemon, the cell phone game, or people who maybe like to get together and paint, or people who like to go hiking, for example. So feel free to research different groups in your area that people meet up and get to know one another. These can all be great places to begin to meet a healthy social support system. Places of worship, for example, can be great, safe places to meet new people. Your neighbors, right? How many of us don't really know our neighbors all that well? But hey, you get to see them every day, potentially. and exercise groups, for example. So these are just some ideas of some potential groups that you could begin to join to build that new family of choice and that strong social support. Number 5 is all about the trust. So betrayal trauma really hits us in the area of being able to trust other people. And so my best advice here is that when it comes to trust, take your time. It's okay to not trust people at first. In fact, it's probably quite smart to not trust people for a while and give people, a chance to crack that door open a little bit, but don't just fling the door wide open and trust anyone and everyone, right? It's okay to allow people time to begin to earn your trust. And how they can do that is through repeated trustworthy behavior over a period of time. So not right away. Give them maybe months or maybe even several months or maybe even a year, for example, of just casually getting to know them, cracking the door open a bit, and seeing how they respond to your friendship attempts and your communication attempts and any type of social gatherings you might attend and to get to know them, right? So really the best way to begin to trust people is by giving it a chance, taking your time, going slowly, and just letting your gut instinct be the guide here. Is the person proving themselves to be trustworthy and caring, and quite a few months have passed and there's been no red flags? Okay, keep proceeding. Sounds pretty good, right? But if at any time, trust your gut instinct, if something seems off or you're beginning to see some red flags, it's okay to put the kibosh on the developing relationship too. So this is all about us kind of leaning into our own intuitive wisdom that has always been there and giving ourselves time and being kind to ourselves during this process as we learn to trust people again. Number 6 is prioritizing yourself. So especially if the betrayal trauma has just happened recently, I want you to focus on the basics, right? This is going back to basics, self-care. Pretend you are sick with an incredibly bad flu. What would you do, right? You would take to bed, you would get lots of rest, eat lots of soup and nourishing foods. You might have, somebody you care about check in on you if you're lucky enough to have somebody like that. But you're going to be prioritizing yourself and getting better. So that's the point here. You're going to be in a state of shock probably after the immediate aftermath. You're going to need to just slow down, take it easy, and let yourself gently recuperate. And what I want everybody to know is that trauma naturally resolves itself. So the human beings are rather remarkable in our resilience and our ability to overcome very terrible things. And so trust your own body and mind and heart's natural ability to overcome bad things. Human beings have been going through bad things since the dawn of ages, but we've also overcome bad things also since the beginning of time. And what we know from the trauma field is that trauma will naturally resolve itself over time with the right supports. So this is where therapy is super important. Really safe social supports if you have them, like friends or colleagues or anybody else that's trustworthy. Crying and grieving and letting yourself feel all the feelings, rewriting your narrative and your story over time, and just taking good, gentle care of yourself. And what you will find is that sure enough, grief and loss and trauma will naturally resolve itself with time. So time really is a great friend here, especially with the right supports. The 7th important tip is to distance yourself from the perpetrator or the person who has betrayed you. If it's possible, go no contact, for example, to give yourself time to heal and not be re-wounded and re-triggered by their presence and anything they might be saying or doing. If you can't go no contact, low contact is okay as well, where maybe you just see the family member for holidays and only for a very short period of time. But do try to distance yourself if at all possible, because what we know, again, in the trauma field is that it's very hard to heal around the same environment or person who harmed you. So that if that person is still present, you're still going to be getting triggered. You're still going to be feeling emotionally violated. You're still probably going to be having and experiencing behaviors from them that are still abusive or harmful in some way, shape, or form. And it's going to be very, very hard for your nervous system to heal and go back to a safe baseline if you're still around the perpetrator. So that's why it's so important to get away from people who harm us so that our nervous systems can finally heal, our emotions can finally settle down, and we can begin to feel safe again. So I give you permission, do block communication attempts from the perpetrator, whether it's through social media or cell phones, etc. Block, block, block. There's no need to be communicating with this person who has violated your trust in such a significant fashion. And definitely enforce boundaries as well. It's okay to tell people, nope, that doesn't work anymore. Don't call me anymore. I don't want to talk with you anymore. This is where you are allowed to take your voice back and your power back and say, no, I don't want to be harmed anymore, and I don't want you in my life anymore. And the last thought I want to leave with you is this beautiful quote by Maya Angelou: when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. This quote has stuck with me for many, many years. I love this quote. It hits its mark very deeply. Myself as a trauma survivor, our abusers, the people who have betrayed our trust and the sanctity of what should be a safe, loving, connected relationship, they have harmed us repeatedly. And it's something that just many trauma survivors struggle with, is letting go of these individuals who have harmed us. Oftentimes we love them, their family, oftentimes. We love them. We want the relationship to be closer. We oftentimes try and change ourselves so much to try to save the relationship. And really the key note here is that they have been showing us who they are this entire time. And we just didn't believe it. We didn't believe it. And hence we kept getting harmed again and again and again. And there is so much truth to that. When somebody shows you who they are, believe them. They're showing you who they are. So if you've been betrayed and you've been abused and you've been harmed, don't give that person 2, 3, 4, and more chances to hurt you again. Believe what you see and hear with your own eyes and ears. They are abusive. They've shown you who they are. Give yourself permission to put this relationship to rest, to move on, to heal, and to protect yourself from any further harm. You are worth it. Healthy people will not harm you in abusive and despicable ways and betray your trust. They will not do that. You are worth more than abusive relationships. And believe people when they show you who they are the first time without giving them multiple chances to harm you. I hope this video was helpful. Please feel free to drop a comment below if you have any questions. If you have any suggestions for other videos you might like me to make, I'm totally all ears, open to that. I so appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everybody.